Welcome back to the Various and Numerous podcast, episode number 54 with Secret Network Agent and Developer Relations, Gijs Ertemann. Welcome to the show today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy to be on and discuss crypto privacy and secret at large.
Oh yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on here today. I've been I've been very interested in privacy protocols ever since really Bitcoin launched. And in the beginning, everyone thought Bitcoin was almost everyone in the beginning thought Bitcoin was a privacy network. It was kind of funny. I don't know. I'm going to ask you more about your backstory here in a minute, but a lot of people from the onset of the network thought that Bitcoin was a privacy network. And that was one of the things that I think a lot of early Bitcoiners were intrigued by and interested in. And then later on, everyone found out that it's the complete opposite. And over the last, I don't remember the year Monero launched, 2014, I believe. So 4 or 5 years after Bitcoin launched, we saw some real privacy protocols that were pretty good take off, like Monero. And there's been a list of others since then, but I'm delving more into the Cosmos ecosystem, and I'm interested in Secret Network and just like what you guys are working on, and like more about the project. So it's a pleasure to have you here today. I always like to get started. I just ask 1 or 2 questions about your early life and like what got you interested in technology. So I don't know if you mind saying where you're from and like how you got interested in tech.
Yeah, of course. So I live in the Netherlands. I grew up mostly enthusiastic about earth science. Studied physics in the end, so did a master's in physics in the Netherlands. And actually, during my final phases, I ended up dabbling in crypto because apparently I had too much time on my side or something. So I invested a bit in the start of 2021. So basically at the peak of the last bull market, I guess I lost it all or close to everything. And then somewhere in, I think it was May, I was always sort of into Cosmos or interoperability. I think one of my main sort of values has always been like helping people or working with people generally creates better ecosystems than sort of trying to do everything on your own. So very, very much of the open source mindset. And I guess that's why I got attracted to Cosmos, dabbled in Secret in May, I think, May 2021, and then started slightly like joined the community, got all the hype, then Tarantino NFTs launched, and Secret went to maybe to $10 or something, and then I started helping out people in the ecosystem were just lost. They didn't know how to swap or how to get their privacy back or how to make a private wallet, or ended up eventually as a sort of technical support. So helped a lot of people offboard their assets or had problems, and then slowly moved into a sort of educational role. Wrote some articles, delved deeper into the ecosystem, got very familiar with Cosmos governance, and then that all transferred into a role. So currently I've been working part-time for the Secret ecosystem since the start of 2022. So it's a little bit over a year now. So that's, I guess, my backstory. And yeah, very much dove into the cryptographics behind Secret and private transactions. Dove very deep into Monero because I think it's still just the most, maybe not simplest, but it's just such a beautiful protocol for what it exactly entails to do. So yeah, very, very much active in that space and always trying to learn.
It's pretty impressive that you've delved in. You jumped in the pool with both feet, or whatever. You've got in pretty quick here to the in a year and a half or 2 years maybe. You've gotten pretty far into the ecosystem and stuff, and you actually have a job with the network. So I have to pat you on the back, or you have to pat yourself on the back for that one. It's pretty impressive, man. So what, you're just like an autodidact that like you can teach yourself stuff very quickly, or?
I don't know, just I really enjoy teaching people or explaining things, and it enabled like in order to actually explain stuff, you need to sort of learn it yourself. Um, so I very much was a newbie, I guess, 2 years ago, but really learned to just deep dive first mediums and like understand sort of the basic articles, and then at a certain point, I started researching protocols basically full time, like deep diving into white papers, actually writing about core components of the blockchain stack, and then it went just incredibly fast. Did developer documentation after that for a bit. Um, Still not much of a developer myself. I have some background in Python, or at least I worked a lot with that, but it's all sort of scientific background, which is completely different than than what crypto applications look like. But I guess it helped me. So I having or like willing to be able to teach other people really got myself sort of up to the knowledge standards, because I think even a year ago I definitely was not on a level sufficiently enough to actually teach people, but now it's getting somewhere.
Yeah, it's impressive. I like what you said about interoperability too, because I view interoperability as like the great value unlock of our time. Basically, like I'm all about free markets and the ability for us to just increase everyone's human capital across the world. Basically, is that sort of how you view interoperability?
I guess it really sort of started for me as in thinking of, okay, what if I build my application, do I want to lock, like, it's basically locked behind the users of that protocol, right? Uh, and I guess that's the sort of fundamental flaw of how blockchain is designed, or like how it works, in the sense that it's a database. Like, first and foremost, it's a database, and that works perfectly well, but it also means that everybody has to be connected to the database. And uh, seemingly that's a more difficult decision, like a more difficult problem actually than people anticipated it to be, in the sense that yes, a lot of people are connected to the Bitcoin database, but less people are connected to the Ethereum database, and then even less to like AVAX or Cosmos ecosystem. Or so you get into a scenario where just many people are locked away from applications simply because they made a different choice. And I think that's sort of a flaw we should be able to work around. So of course Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation are very much working towards that vision, right? In their own way, they say we can scale by adding extra layers, layer 1, layer 2, and then all of these ecosystems should be interoperable. And then the Cosmos ecosystem and Polkadot are, I guess, completely taking the other route, where they say maybe it's not a problem if we have that many databases, as long as all of the databases are just connected. So they really try to, okay, every blockchain is a different database and every blockchain has different clients, but if we just make it really easy to interact with them, maybe that solves the problem. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I just think it's sort of the core road to mainstream is finding a way to simplify interoperability, because we want one user to be able to have one wallet, or at least one platform to interact with. Um, but I guess we're relatively far away from that sort of abstraction, and for now it's just using bridges and making that all work for now.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the latter idea that you talked about, that kind of like what Cosmos and Polkadot are working on. All right, let's get more into Secret Network though. Can you tell us like when Secret launched, and just a little bit of the overall view, like for the person or people that have no idea what Secret Network is?
Yeah, so Secret Network is a privacy-focused blockchain, layer 1 blockchain in the Cosmos ecosystem, and it focuses specifically on something we call computational privacy. So that means you have Bitcoin and Monero. Bitcoin is the public version of transactions, and Monero is the private version of transactions. And then you have Ethereum and Secret, where Ethereum is sort of the public version of doing computations, and Secret is the private version of being able to do private smart contracts. And this enables a lot of interesting applications, at least is what we think, and also gives users relatively similar privacy set to Web 2. So if you interact with an application, you can at least be certain that your neighbor doesn't know what's happening. And this all started in 2015, I guess, is the sort of original start of the idea. Is that Gijs Ertemann is the founder of Secret Labs, which is a core development organization in our ecosystem. He wrote a paper on access control for blockchains. He sort of innovated the idea that what if we make blockchains private and use like private keys to have people access only certain parts of their data or databases. And that's transformed into a paper in 2017, which is called Decentralizing Privacy. And this was back then referring to Enigma, which is a sort of first iteration of that white paper on Ethereum. So they tried allowing private computations for Ethereum by using a sort of layer 2 system, using multi-party computation and later trusted execution environments. And then at a certain moment, they realized, okay, this is not going to fit on Ethereum because of many different problems like scalability, interoperability, the lack of sort of your own security design. You're not able to make blocks if you're layer 2 specifically. You have to sort of work around that. So they said we need a blockchain that has privacy by default, because if we're going to opt into privacy, then we come into all kinds of different problems with public data revealing certain privacy elements. And that's when they made the move the tech stack to Cosmos. That happened, I guess, early 2020. And all of that research led into a mainnet launch around September 2020, I think, for private smart contracts. So we've now been on mainnet for more than 2 years already, and happily enjoying that there so far. After private smart contracts came a bridge, and then the first DeFi application, which is called Secret Swap, which isn't really around anymore, and then it moved further and further, enabled IBC, and I think the biggest growth has been the last year, where Secret enabled CosmWasm version 1, which may sound very disfamiliar to a lot of people, but this basically means this is a type of programming language used for smart contracts on Secret, and these smart contracts are interoperable with other chains in the Cosmos ecosystem. So Cosmos chains like Osmosis and Juno and Stargaze, they have IBC enabled, which is a trustless bridge, or I guess a trust minimized bridge. And this bridge doesn't only allow for token transfers, but also for contracts. So this means that you can call a contract on Secret from Juno, and that all launched last year. And this really sort of, I guess, boomed the applications that can be developed on Secret a lot further. So now we're focusing on something which we call privacy as a service, and Secret 2.0, which is, one is we want to give privacy to every other blockchain in the ecosystem, and luckily there are already 2 Ethereum applications doing that. There are many Cosmos applications doing that, and the other being, we can dive into it later maybe, but Secret 2.0 is sort of, we've realized the vision of Secret, which started back in 2015 and later in 2017, is we have computational privacy on mainnet. So what is next? And that is, I think, very interesting. It has a tokenomics chains. It has interesting new cryptographic primitives, and it's really pushing the boundaries of privacy on for computations on mainnet. So I really hope a lot of people are excited about Secret 2.0.
So basically, anything you build within the Cosmos ecosystem, what's it called, IBC, the interchain ecosystem or whatever, you sort of build in or baked in this inherent ability to jump from with these bridges to any other chain built inside Cosmos. Is that correct?
Yeah, IBC allows you to basically transfer any message across different chains while having the security of the both chains. So as long as both chains are making blocks, and as long as both chains are being honest, then the bridge has basically complete trustless assumptions. So there's no custodial, there's no single person that issues messages. There are relayers, as we call them, which are basically machines that grab a message from one chain, they put it on the other chain, and then the consensus of both chains just keep going, and this enables the sort of interoperability you see on Cosmos. And this allows for, like you said, you can transfer Atom to every single chain, and you can wrap it on secret, send it privately, but you can also, on, for example, Juno, make a game and say, I want my game to have like private cards or like randomness, so that not someone can predict what is going to happen. And then you just go to secret and you say, can I have a random number from secret, or can you keep my cards private? And then you're able to make a game on Juno which has privacy by using contracts on secret. So you get into really cool scenarios, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like exactly what I envisioned for this space, 10 years ago. So it's pretty cool to see it come to fruition. So did Secret Network build their own privacy protocol, or we already mentioned Monero? They use RandomX, and there's a lot of. I'm a fan of Mimblewimble. I think it's a pretty cool protocol. What is Secret optimize?
Yeah, so in privacy, I guess you have the transactional privacy protocols, which really are Monero, but I guess Mimblewimble accounts for that as well, and the Zcash, right, which are sort of the different approaches to getting privacy for transactions. They often use like ring signatures and ZK, snarks, or bulletproofs, or you offload computation to a trusted party. Like, there are multiple interesting things to do that. And then you have the computational side, which are chains like Secret, which is, I guess, the only mainnet chain at the moment, but there's a lot of other protocols are like aiming to do the same thing. And what Secret is doing is every validator on the network runs a specific hardware set that has a trusted execution environment, as we call it. And this is basically sort of physically separate processor inside of their machine that allows them to enter encrypted data into this processor, then decrypt it, do the computation, and then send out encrypted information without the validator or anyone ever getting access to sort of the plain text data. So you're able to take in encrypted data from users, do computations over them, and return encrypted results, and just have to find out a way to sort of get these results back to the users without ever revealing any data to any of the participants in the network. And that's really how the sort of secret base layer works. And it has a lot of cryptographic primitives, which may sound daunting, but if someone is interested, they can look it up. I would suggest just go to the documentation. It's called docs.secret.network, and there's explanation about the elliptic curve, Diffie-Hellman, the key exchange, and some other sort of core cryptographic primitives that are used to get this done.
Yeah, not everyone is as nerdy as us, I guess, and is wants to know everything about how it works. But it is super interesting.
I mean, if they're listening here, it's a good start, I guess.
That's true.
I always say looking at the documentation of a protocol is probably the best way to assess its quality, because if it's written in such a way that it shares all the things that are wrong or good about the protocol in a honest and reflective manner, then you got a good hitter. And otherwise, it's often just a lot of bullshit.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. A lot of people don't even read the white papers of the projects they're invested in, and that's probably a major. At least I view it personally as a major mistake. I can't give anybody else advice on what to do with their money, but definitely probably a good idea to read what I'm investing in, or at least using. So you sort of touched on it, but why do you think that the Secret Network? I actually listened to a little bit of a podcast with the founder. Is he also Dutch?
No, he's from. I think you mean Gijs Ertemann. He's from Israel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he had an accent that wasn't American, so I thought maybe it could have been Dutch as well. Why do you think that they chose the Cosmos ecosystem? I mean, you kind of touched on it, but out of could you build something like this on Polkadot?
I think this would be very, very hard on Polkadot. There is a chain that sort of tries to do similar things. It's called So sorry, I'm blanking on the name.
No worries.
Okay, I'm blanking on the name. It's not all that good, but anyway, there's a chain on Polkadot. It's specified to sort of do private computation for game states. But I guess the problem with, or not, maybe it's not a problem, but it's a design choice. That for Polkadot, you are bound to the relay chain, right? So the relay chain is this sort of core concept in the Polkadot ecosystem that makes blocks. So there is one security set, there is one set of validators, and they make blocks. And every other chain, every other parachain, I guess, in Polkadot puts information into these blocks. So by definition, you're sort of bound to the parameters by which these blocks are made. So you cannot change the block time, you cannot change who is validating it, you cannot change how data is handled inside of it. You cannot, like all of these things are sort of set in stone. So on Cosmos, however, security is separate. So every blockchain has their own security assumptions. So every blockchain has their own validators, their own type of hardware, their own block time, their own block size, their own like everything. In theory, a lot of, or like in practice, I guess, a lot of applications choose exactly the same things, but you can completely tailor it to whatever you want it to be. And that is really what enables, I guess, the sort of vision SCRT has, is that if we want to have a blockchain purposefully built to have privacy from the start, like always and everywhere, then you just need to make certain changes to how security is done. So I guess there's also puts in a lot of interesting like niche things on SCRT, which are not the same on other Cosmos chains. And sometimes it confuses people, but this is exactly what allows SCRT to have this private computation. So there, I think, to answer your question, is this possible on Polkadot? There are some feasibilities that you would choose a separate validator set. So you send encrypted data to separate sets, and then they send information with a proof or something to the relay chain. But you get into a very complicated architecture that sort of allows like sending data to arbitrary other places. So that's why I guess Cosmos makes more sense, at least in my opinion. And then as to why they chose Cosmos, it really is at least as I've always heard about it and spoke with guys, that it's really we want privacy on a layer one vision. And if you want privacy on a layer one, the Cosmos app chain vision just makes a lot of sense. Back then, they looked into many different protocols or potentially designing their own stack, and they saw the work on IBC and the potential that one day it would be able to handle messages and give privacy to every single other chain in the Cosmos ecosystem. And that just, I guess, really enthusiastic to work with Cosmos as a tech stack.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I could see, there's so many people that don't understand why this is so important, but it should be obvious to everybody why, some people say, well, why do you need private transactions? But what would you say to somebody who said that?
I guess it's often, so you need sort of a counter why it's necessary, I guess, in the sense that, I guess back in the day, Bitcoin sort of was private, right? In the sense that there was no KYC for an exchange, or
Right.
you would buy peer to peer maybe, or at least nobody would track. Like there's no chain in that. Back then there was no Chainalysis would grab the last million blocks or whatever and just parse all the data and find out who is connected to who. And I guess that landscape sort of completely changes. So yeah, Bitcoin is pseudonymous, right? In the sense that if I don't know your address, I don't know what you're doing. But the fact that the moment you send me a transaction, I know everything about you. And I guess maybe for Bitcoin, that isn't even like too problematic, because I can maybe see how much Bitcoin you own, but it's not related to a lot of things, right? I can't see, besides what you own, I can't see what insurance you have or
Right.
what other things you're doing. But when you get to Ethereum, and I think that's sort of where the scary part comes in for me, is that let's say you use one of those social platforms on Ethereum and you make a profile, or you use ENS, then someone can see your address, they can see what you own, which NFTs you have, how much value you have. But some people also take out like insurance in Web3, so that you would be able to see for what they are insured or what kind of loans they have out and when they would, under what value they would liquidate. And you get into a lot of sort of more, complex things that, do you really want your neighbor to just go to social media, see your Ethereum profile and know everything about you? I guess you don't, right? It becomes a bit, um, strange. So then people say, okay, maybe I just need to obfuscate my wallet from my identity, but it actually is really, really, really hard to sort of remain that in that state. So I guess what Secret does and what Monero does and like what privacy is for is that even if I send you a transaction and you may know my wallet address or whatever, then you can still sort of not see what kind of computations I'm doing or what kind of loans I have out. So even if your address is visible and your identity is accidentally obscured or like visible, you would still be able to have your privacy. So what would I say to people who think that way? I think it's something you sort of have to realize, or I guess you have to encounter. If you suddenly get a message, I had, okay, maybe this is a good example. I had someone who I know had a high position in Ethereum before, but he also worked in the secret ecosystem later for a little bit. He used to go to like these NFT conferences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then first he had his Ethereum NFTs on a non-private wallet. So people would be able to see what he had, right? So it's like, oh, you're this guy on Twitter. Oh, I see you have like 60,000 in Ethereum or something. Cool, man. And then later he had, like people would just sort of be cool about it. And then he told me that later when he used Secret and some other ways to make a private wallet on Ethereum and buy an NFT with that people would, when they linked up to like Twitter or Telegram, they would come up to him like an hour later or something when they saw him again. I was like, how did you do this, man? I need to know how you can make a private wallet. I'm being stalked every day about my NFT and my net worth, and I'm scared at night and stuff like that. And I guess people are very silent about it. In the open, they're like, yeah, transparency is great and everybody can know whatever about me. But the moment they realize that you can have privacy or it is available or it becomes like a sort of necessity, then the switch suddenly flips. And I guess people, people sort of understand that it's required.
I think we're finally we're moving into the era where people are going to realize the threat and risk of public, all of the smart contracts and all the money, all the, every transaction being public or visible by anybody anywhere. So I think that I think these the people that are really working on this stuff are like they're super important. What do you? I actually listened to one of your other podcasts, one or two. I know I can't remember who the guy's name. Sorry for that, but I heard he's talking about enclaves a bit. Can you tell us about what they are? I had that in my notes here. Can you talk about enclaves a little?
Yeah, of course. So I told the story about, we call it trusted execution environments, and this sort of physically separate CPU. Well, often the CPU is referred to as an enclave because within the CPU there are two sort of components. There is the trusted enclave and the non-trusted enclave, I guess you could call it. So you have two separate sections. One is where sort of the data comes in, and then it flows through a separate section, and that separate section is the part which is physically separate. It has it has a connection in some sense, but sort of the hardware is orchestrated in such a way that the data flows in one direction and isn't accessible otherwise, and then the data flows back. So this sort of physically separate CPU that helps preserve your privacy is called an enclave, and it's also available in your phone, for example. It's when you scan your biometrics, right, to access your iPhone or whatever. Your biometrics aren't like saved on your phone, like literally on the storage somewhere, so that someone could plug in a cable and nick your biometrics. They're stored inside this very delicate part in your phone, which is the same sort of physically separate CPU, but then a lot smaller and sort of specifically designed for phones. And this holds your like private info, like your Google Wallet, like the debit card and stuff in there, and your biometrics. Yeah, so it's a very well used and documented feature used in a lot of physical and trusted devices all over the world.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know that, and I'm sure there's like a lot of other people listening to this that didn't know that either. Good explanation. I appreciate that. We're moving along here because I don't want to take too much of your time. Let's move on to I heard you talking about a companion layer 1 as well. So is there already a companion layer 1, or is that something that could happen in the future?
Yeah, so just as you know, I have actually time enough, so feel free to just take a long conversation. I'm happy
Okay.
to do that. I guess so. What I talked about was Secret 2.0, right? And Secret 2.0 is sort of this vision, I guess, that is similar to maybe Ethereum 2.0 or other like additional versions of the white papers. Okay, we achieved what we did. We have operational computational privacy on mainnet. People can use it. It's cross chain. What can we do next? And there are sort of a few core things to that. One is we want to add a lot of cryptographic primitives to Secret. So we want to add, I guess, maybe a quick reference. There is a blog out. It's called Beyond CK. The first one was out, I think, in December, and now the second one's out. It's called Beyond CK 2. Beyond CK 2, and it describes how sort of all the different privacy techniques work. So it describes zero-knowledge proofs, it describes homomorphic encryption, trusted execution environments, multi-party computation, all in a setting of, okay, how can we sort of use this in blockchain to create private smart contracts? Mm-hmm. And we've taken a very deep look at all these techniques and basically said, okay, what if we don't choose one, but if we just take the best of every single approach? So Guy is very familiar with MPC. He wrote a lot of papers about it, but we also have experts on a lot of other different of the cryptographic primitives. So I guess the first thing is what's covered in Secret 2.0 is we're going to add stuff like zero-knowledge proofs for specific solutions. So for specific things, it might be a very good idea to enhance your privacy even further by using CKPs. And then the same accounts for homomorphic encryption and multi-party computation. I think maybe to quickly go into multi-party computation, it sort of allows you to spread your data amongst multiple participants to compute over it. And that creates a situation where you are even less reliant on a single person. So it creates an additional security barrier to sort of break your encryption or break your data. And it also allows for very interesting things like threshold wallets, which are things like Fireblocks, for example, that have a contract that allows you to sort of only spend an X amount or automatically liquidate your assets or do stuff like that without you yourself needing to sign. But still the wallet is only able to process like mass transactions when you sign it yourself. So it's like sort of additional security layer. And we really want to implement things like that, not in a Web 2 sense where there is a trusted party who does that, but only on Secret. So you will have a contract on Secret that does stuff like that for you. So I guess that's part one of sort of 2.0. It's adding the primitives.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but is that part live or is that's forthcoming?
This is the first part probably that's going to come, and I don't have exact timelines, but on our roadmap, the first ideations of this phase are outlined for Q1 and Q2. So Secret 2.0, the proposal for specifically the tokenomics will actually go live at the end of this week or next week, I think. So it's very much sort of research in progress. The white paper is coming out very, very soon. So yes, it's all coming. I guess none of this is live, but there are really good ideas which are already outlined in like the code base and checked if they are feasible and how we're going about this. So that's part one. It's like adding extra security to certain aspects. Okay, what if I want this specific computation to be even more secure? What can I do? I add another cryptographic layer. So that's what we're going to do. And then The second part is the tokenomics change, and I can go into it, but I think we've learned a lot in the past 3 years. I mean, DeFi has come out, then it was DeFi 2.0, then DeFi 3, like first with Ohm, right? The Ohm forks, and now DeFi 3.0 with stuff like GMX. So we're taking a look at there and seeing how we can adopt. And then the third thing, and that's what you touched on, it's companion chains, or how do we make secrets not just a single chain, but a privacy constellation? How can we help people to have privacy on multiple aspects? So we outlined a few examples of these, and some of these are already in production. For others, we're searching teams or willing other teams to sort of contribute in the same ecosystem. And the idea is that Cosmos allows you to have something which is called interchain security, and that means that you get a system very similar to Polkadot. So you can make separate blocks, but we sort of share the validator set. So we share incentives to grow together. We share incentives to grow our tokens together. We maybe share even economic pools or swaps or DeFi products. And we want these other chains to be very specific to work towards sort of enhancing and widening the secret scope. So one could be a transactional privacy chain, so a chain that focuses specifically on something like Monero or Zcash, where you have private transaction, and then we have the main secret chain, which is very fast private computations, and then a third one is, I guess, the companion chain you talked about, and we talked about first in the block of 2.0, which is called Threshold FHE, which means you basically build the idol of private computation, like the best possible scenario, at least in the current technical suite. However, it's slow, like it's insanely slow, but it works, or it can work. And we're going to put a lot of research into getting this chain up and running. We're looking for partners to work there as well, and just to grow sort of the expertise in that area, and deliver these extra companion chains, which give you, the user, I guess, optionality. It's like, okay, I want a fast DeFi transaction. I need some privacy, but like if a little bit of it leaks, it's not going to be a massive problem. Then you would use maybe secret. And then if you want to say, I wouldn't mind if it takes a day or 2 days to process, but I need this to be like immensely secure, then you would choose another layer that's very close by. Like it's easy to interact with, but it's on a different blockchain, which is very accompanied with secret. And then if you want to do private communications, you can use a separate layer, or private data storage could even be a separate chain. And I guess that's really the Cosmos app chain vision. It's relatively trivial or easy to launch a chain, especially when you share a validator set. Okay. So why would we share a block space and not just scale out horizontally and give more options to users? As long as we sort of abstract the complexity away, it becomes a very interesting aspect, at least in my opinion.
Excellent explanation. So is that actually, so you could, there in theory, there's no max to these companion chains. You could have 5 or 10 companion chains, all layered out with different layers of security, or different difficulty, like you said, of security, basically.
Yeah, you make different decisions, right? I guess that's sort of the thing we learned in blockchain, is that there is no sort of optimal way to go about something. Like everything just has different assumptions, and that's really this protocol. But no, there's no cap. I guess at a certain point, validators may not like to spin up yet another machine to launch yet another chain, right. Or maybe some aspects don't get enough traction. I mean, it only makes sense to launch a chain if it's actually going to get traction, right? And has a lot of usage. Otherwise, maybe it's better to just wait for it and launch it at a later point in time. I guess that's something the Cosmos is like app chain vision is sort of hindering it. It's like, when do we launch it as a smart contract, and when do we launch it as a chain? I mean, is that at 10 transactions a day, or at 30, or at 1,000, or at 10,000? Right. People don't know yet. But right. I guess the Cosmos Hub is going to really be the first to get a lot of side chains. And as a validator as well, I'm very curious to see how that goes. So yeah, they will be a guinea pig, I guess. But I hope we won't be be much later.
Speaking of validators, I think there's somewhere around 50 validators right now, and you guys are capped at around 70. Is that accurate? Somewhere around 70? Is that true?
We currently our active set is capped at 80 validators. Cosmos uses delegated proof of stake, so there's a slightly different mechanism than something like Ethereum, which has you can only lock up 32 ETH for one node, right? And then you need to spin up a new node.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of makes it so that people will spin up several nodes themselves. So multiple nodes might be owned by the same person or by the same entity. While on SCRT or Cosmos in general, you use delegated proof of stake. So you might launch a validator and then 100 or 200 or 300 people will delegate their tokens to you. And you sort of, they can vote themselves, but in block making, you vote for them. So you determine sort of how they vote for specific blocks. And we currently have 80 validators live on mainnet, and governance can decide at any point sort of to increase that. But I guess what we've learned in the Cosmos ecosystem is that you don't want to launch with too many validators at the start because you get a lot of people that run 2 or maybe run 3, or like NFT communities run like 5, or you get like really weird scenarios where people are sort of Sybil attacking the chain.
Right.
And you don't want to launch with too little, right? Because then it's not decentralized enough. But the number of the validators doesn't really matter. The only important thing is sort of how the stake is dispersed across those validators. So some chains, I think SCRT is among those actually, with like 80 validators, are way more decentralized than chains with 120 or 140, simply because the stake is a lot more dispersed closer to the bottom of the set, basically, instead of some chains having like 1 and 2 have like 15% and 20% of the voting power, and then the rest is close to nothing.
So you mean it's basically a little more of a democratic system, but at the end of the day, one of these validators is speaking for the group. If that makes vote for the group.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it's a sort of it's like it's not a 2-party system, but it's sort of an 80-party system, if that makes sense.
That's a good way to put it.
And then so they vote. So you and Tendermint consensus runs on it uses something called Bison's fault tolerance, which means that there is no 51% attack. That doesn't really exist. You have 33% of the chain. 66% of the chain needs to be alive in order for the chain to make blocks. So as soon as more than 33% of the voting power stops, then the chain halts. So it just stops. And then if people would come online again, it would just start going again. And then you need more than 66% of the voting power. So you need 33% needs to drop liveness, and then you need 66% to break the consensus. So if 66% of the voting power comes together, only then they can double sign or reorder a block or change a block. So instead of 51% in Bison's fault tolerance, that is 66%. So that's why it's sort of it's easier, I guess, to make a delegated proof of system work, because it's not as like 51% is quite a low bar. If you have a few people with a lot of stake, then that might as well end up there. I mean, you see that already in Ethereum with some of the exchanges having a lot. So anyway, it's an interesting system. Feel free to read up on it. It has some interesting capacities, but I'd consider SCRT to be relatively well decentralized across the Cosmos ecosystem and other delegated proof of stake systems, at least. So
it's very interesting. So we were talking about this in my Telegram. I got a Patreon group, and we were talking about it in the Telegram chat attached to that. Zcash. What do you think about? So do you think Zcash being like optionally private, and what do you view? Do you think that's a problem, or what do you think about chains that are optionally private?
It's a good question. I guess maybe I think the most blatant, mistakenly optionally private thing are mixers. I think mixers are inherently faulty or flawed.
Mm-hmm.
I know they work for a lot of people, but the fact that you don't, like, one, you can see when someone interacts with the mixer, right? And then immediately your address just gets banned from exchanges. And then the second thing is that when you go into a mixer, you just get random coins back. You don't have like an actual proof of putting, like you have a proof, a receipt, but there is no, the coins that go in, you put in, are not the coins you're getting out. You're getting someone else's coins out. And as coins are not fungible, you get into a lot of problems where you get like dirty coins, if that makes sense.
Tainted coins is the term. Yeah.
Yeah, tainted coins. I think those systems are like sort of the first iteration of why optional privacy sucks.
Right.
But then Zcash, I guess, Zcash system is super cool. I think Zcash for transactional privacy makes a lot of sense, but I do, or at least I personally still think that the optional privacy design is flawed in the sense that there is just data leakage from public transactions that leak data, which eventually can potentially tell you something about the actually shielded transactions. So I think if I would design Zcash again, I wouldn't make it optionally private and just only private, and then I think it would be very cool. But anyway, they fundamentally work different than Monero, right? So it's cool to have these two sort of options go at each other and see how that evolves. I think Zcash is working on Cosmos as well, trying to sort of make something happen there. So yeah, I think optional privacy is problematic, but
Thumbs down.
yeah, I mean, yeah, in some sense, a lot of things are optionally private. Even if they are private by design, it might still look or seem optionally private. So anyway, there's a, it's never black and gray, but in general, I think I'd favor I'd favor privacy by default over optional privacy.
Base layer privacy.
Yes.
Yes. I've written quite a bit about privacy in the past too, so I was interested in what you thought about that, and I agree. We agree on that topic for sure. Moving onward here, can you tell us a little bit? I have no sort of knowledge about the NFT platform on Secret. Can you just tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So on Secret, NFTs have interesting qualities in the sense that they have private metadata and private ownership. I think those are the two easy tackles. And then a third thing which is interesting is called access control. So private ownership means that if you own an ape, I have no clue of, I can't look up the ape on the blockchain and then see your address. So you can just do whatever with your NFT, and I wouldn't be able to find your address, even if you use it on Twitter. And then, but that of course also entails like licenses or certificates or like any other NFT you can imagine, or even tokens. Tokens also have private ownership. And then you have private metadata, which I think is probably the coolest aspect, in that if you have an NFT on Secret, you can have both public and private metadata. So you're able to have data which only the owner can see. So in the most simple form, you can have sort of a picture of like a gray version of your NFT, and then the NFT is the private version, and then only you see the private version. And this is like super simple, but more interesting concepts come into Tarantino, for example, launched the NFT, Quentin Tarantino, and there was no public metadata, there was only private metadata, and the private metadata was a part of this handwritten script. So you're able to auction off items which people would definitely want to see, but they can't. And I guess that's sort of a problem with like normal NFTs. It's like, okay, everybody can see what you own, even though you are the owner. So yes, you have like the certificate, but maybe it's more valuable if only you can see it and you can share it with some people. And that also gets into like NFTs that evolve, become easier because you can evolve them over time in your private metadata. People wouldn't be able to see what the evolution is going to be. While on Ethereum, for example, if you have evolving NFTs, if you do that in a decentralized fashion, you basically already know what the evolvement of the NFT is going to be, or like how it's going to look in 5 years' time, if that's already in the contract, because all of the things are public. That's not possible in Secret. And then the third thing is access control, and that is that I can share whatever I want about my NFT with whomever I want by sending them a verifiable proof. So you're able to sort of show that you own something and thereby access a Telegram chat without ever revealing the NFT you own, the specific one. or there is a group that does ticketing with this. So you're able to enter a conference because you own a certain NFT without ever sort of explaining any information about your wallet or stuff like that. So you get, I guess, interesting use cases which are just not feasible on other blockchains. And then the platform, or at least the only marketplace so far on Secret is called Stash, but there are many different applications. I think coolest being like VRL, which does ticketing, and real life. They do they send you literally shoes and hats to when you buy an NFT, and they're like specified to your needs by a designer, and then they put a chip in, which resembles sort of like an NFC chip. And the cool thing is they never know your home address. Like all of it is private, so you're able to claim handmade shoes via an NFT purchase without them ever knowing your address. And then when you get these shoes, you can come up to a conference, they can scan your shoes, and you go into the conference, for example, because they have this NFC chip, right? So they're able to sort of do ticketing and stuff like that. I think it's really cool. And then there are certificates as well. It's called SCRT. They do like educational certificates and licenses. So there are many different opportunities there. Yeah.
Where do you actually pick up? Wait, I lost you at the end there. Sorry. How do you actually get the tangible item?
So you buy the NFT, right?
Uh-huh.
And then they have this add-on redemption process where you enter your details or part of your details, but these details go like from the contract, I think directly to the vendor or something, or like they go as like a bar.
Of randomness, basically.
Yeah, they go to like as like a barcode, like a sending barcode, a shipping barcode to the vendor. So no one ever sort of sees your address, not the contract party, not VRL, not even the vendor, and then they just scan the barcode, put it on a box, put your shoes in, and then they send the shoes to you.
That's pretty cool.
But
yeah.
they just sort of proved the concept with merch, but it could be whatever, right? They just thought it was cool to do like handmade designer items. So you can buy socks with secret logos on them and Stash logos, and I think it's cool. So sometimes I wear my secret socks.
You can imagine a million use cases for that, like with luxury goods or anything.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think they've just launched their NFT on Ethereum. They're bringing a lot of Ethereum users over to do this stuff. So
you could also imagine like medicine and things like that even in the future. Yeah. Also,
yeah.
You can do that. That has serious utility.
Yeah, you sort of obfuscate your identity from what you're buying. I think that's a big problem actually in Web 2. If you look at how much data certain shops have over you and what you like and what you do, and indeed when you come to medicine, I think that's actually a really cool concept. I didn't think about the medicine use case before. It's cool. Yeah.
You're bringing a lot of value here today. I'm glad I could add a little bit. Just a couple more questions. I was going to ask you about tokenomics, but it sounds like the proposal is coming up to vote on those.
Yeah. So tokenomics are currently relatively simple. Secret has no max supply, similar to Ethereum. It has an inflation schedule which rewards stakers and thereby also validators. If you stake, you earn more than inflation. So as long as you sort of provide to the protocol, you're fine. And people who do not stake get diluted. I guess that's a very similar concept to most proof of stake chains. And then what's going to happen and there are some taxes that go to a community pool, which governance can use to you make spend proposals and do interesting things. And then you have the standard stuff, right? Where if you make a transaction, your gas fees goes to the stakers, and if a proposal doesn't go through, your proposal deposit is burned. And there's some other mechanisms like that. But in general, revenue accrues to stakers. And then in Secret 2.0, the tokenomics, at least the ID is it's not voted on right yet. So if it doesn't go through, then this doesn't happen. But I imagine, seeing as we had a very long feedback period and a lot of the community members evolved, we had started with a chat with 20 people, it became 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 at a certain point. We had a lot of people interact with this proposal, and then it went to the forums. The idea of that is that we change inflation over time to sort of slow down, and stakers will still always have a positive yield. So if you stake, you still earn more than inflation, but inflation starts going down over time. But accompanying with that, we are going to add a developer fund to the chain. And this basically means that there is a fund um, that slowly accrues tokens, and there can be a council of this fund, and they can spend some of this secret on interesting new applications or developers that want to build out specific things. And we've already been doing that a little bit, but it was sort of a little bit centralized to the core development and or very decentralized to the governance. And now we're putting a third option in the middle, which is sort of it has like a DAO to govern it. And I think that's going to be super interesting because we did that for the Terra developer fund. You can look it up, but it was relatively successful, I thought. So I hope that's going to be a good hit. And then the inflation details and whatever, you really have to see the charts because it doesn't portray well over camera and voice, I guess.
Right. So basically, the tokenomics could potentially just get an entire overhaul, supply and everything, or
Well, the thing is, like, secret is sort of the supply will never change, right? It's not like we can't take your tokens away or something, but the
right.
inflation can change, right? The inflation parameter can change. So that's basically the only thing that's being like explored.
Yeah, you could take the
Where
tokens away, but you could dilute them by adding more, right?
Yeah, but that's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
The thing still remains that if you stake, you always earn more than inflation. And I guess that's sort of the concept, has always been the concept on proof of stake chains and in secret in general. So I guess in that sense, yes, it's probably a little bit different than Bitcoin for sure, which is like completely set in stone. But I do think changing the tokenomics slightly to be more sustainable, live more of yield, like true yield, transaction fees, and support developers, I think is in my opinion, at least a positive move. But we would be very happy to have any feedback of any tokenomics expert out there. But in general, yes, or like the idea is, no, we're not going to change the max supply or whatever. These are just sort of small parameter changes, which hopefully make this the protocol a little bit more sustainable in the long run. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's the first thing I look at generally when I'm looking at a project. I just go straight to the tokenomics because you can automatically discount 90% of the project. 90% or so probably have just ridiculous tokenomics. In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, on Secret, I think that's interesting in the sense that it's such a long, like, protocol has run for so long that there are no vesting VCs, there is no vested supply, there is no unlocks, there's no stuff like that. It just doesn't exist anymore because we've been on mainnet for forever, and community has been accumulating for such a long time that it's just there is a token supply and it inflates by simple chain parameters, and yeah, after that it's it's a very basic principle, I guess, and it's at least something I enjoy.
Yeah, so we can see there's around 192.4 million right now in circulation with an infinite total. I don't love projects that aren't capped, but yeah, I'm interested to see the next iteration of the tokenomics for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is that governance is in full sort of choice, right? Like there's no, this stuff can't be changed if the secret stakers don't vote for it.
Right.
So in theory, you could cap the supply, but you get into, I guess, how do you reward stakers then, right? If all stakers or all miners, for example, would drop, then what happens to the security of the chain? And that's, I guess, something that we're not exploring in Secret, similar to how it's not being explored in Ethereum. It's like we have to make sure there is some incentive to secure the chain. So so that's there.
That's interesting. I haven't looked at a ton of proof of stake or delegated proof of stake chains in privacy, so it's interesting to think about. Like the ones I wrote for were just their own protocols. They weren't built inside an ecosystem. They were more or less their own thing. So interesting, very interesting to think about. That's something I hadn't considered.
Yeah, it's different if a chain has its own layer one, similar to Ethereum, then it has to sort of incentivize certain stuff. But I think most interesting to the tokenomics of like Secret, for example, is probably when is it going to locked up? When is Secret going to be locked up? And with like protocols like Shade launching that have a lend and a stable coin that requires you to lock up Secret, and then privacy as a service, which means that users on Ethereum to have private voting or to do NFT auctions or to back up their seed phrase, or a lot of other applications which aren't natively built on Secret, but they use Secret contracts. Every single time a user interacts, it's a transaction on Secret, or multiple transactions on Secret, or an instantiation of a contract on Secret. And all those fees all go to stakers. So I really hope that sort of lockups for like DeFi protocols and the usage by other ecosystems of privacy as a service sort of starts growing the total revenue of the chain now.
Super interesting stuff. You've explained everything really well. I only have a couple more questions for you. Sorry, I got two more. The last one's pretty easy too. What do you have any sort of fear about? I mean, everybody. I feel like we all have to have some sort of innate or some sort of fear of government crackdown coming for privacy protocols. What do you think about that? The Netherlands. We can talk. It's interesting because there's no sort of like it's going to be all, which is good in a way, because if one country decides to come in and be too limiting to people, privacy and private smart contracts and everything, they could, people can vote with their feet and move to a place that is more old school liberal, and you could actually still utilize the projects, and then that country where everybody leaves because of lack of freedom eventually realizes their misstep. But what do you think about what do you think about governments and crackdowns on us being able to just transact privately?
Yeah, it's a very complex topic. In general, I think, for example, the Netherlands is sort of, on the one hand, very focused on allowing users to have their own privacy. But on the other hand, the Tornado Cash developer also got he got arrested in the Netherlands. So there's probably some weird disconnect there. But in general, I think sort of problems governments see with privacy for blockchains is transactional privacy mostly, and then lack of auditability. And I think Tornado Cash sort of fit that both, in the sense that there's no way for you to prove what happened. And then a very similar, I guess that's similar to some transactional privacy chains like Monero maybe, but or Monero you can prove what happened, but it's just super opaque to other people and they're sort of scared of it. But I guess they're trying to sort of steer away from that using KYC, and exchanges, right? On and off ramps are KYC. So by definition, you're sort of forced to show what you have anyway. But when it then deals specifically with secrets, there is auditability using viewing keys and permits. So I'm able to share a permit or a viewing key with you, and you would be able to see a part or my entire transaction history for one or all of my tokens or all of my contracts. So that's my very simple way of basically showing what is happening. And then I guess beyond that is that the secret token itself is actually public. And this is by design, in the sense that governance is public, staking is public, the interactions with certain contracts are public. So there is sort of secret really works towards this vision where you can build applications with privacy on a decentralized ecosystem, but it's not completely focused on you're able to launder your funds, because I would 100% recommend against using Secret for anything like that, in the sense that it's just not built for anything remotely similar to that. It's built to secure your data you put into smart contracts, but it's not here to obfuscate where funds are going. It's relatively, I wouldn't say it's like super trackable or something, but even with permits and viewing keys, when they see you have an Atom wallet, you interact with Secret, your CPA will ask you, okay, hey, I saw you interact with Atom and now with Secret. Can you share your Secret permit, your viewing key? And you're able to do that. And only when you don't do that, you sort of get into problems. So there is really no need, I guess, for governments to sort of crack down on this stuff, because as soon as your interactions on like the entire interoperable ecosystem shows that you ever interacted with Secret, there's a simple question to be asked. And if you say yes, then it's all good, I guess. So Secret is, on the one hand, yes, it supports privacy. It's 100% needed, but it's not the hardcore like privacy narrative, as in I want to be able to send someone something and it's just 100% sure it's not trackable. Like it's not trackable on Secret, but it's still, because you have this auditable trail you can give out, it gives you a lot more options. And that's why I think I'm less scared of a crackdown. And I also think in general, even if I'm a big Monero fan as well, I still think a protocol like Monero also doesn't have a lot to be scared about, in my opinion. I think privacy is, it will be a phase where they sort of try to crack down on it, but they won't really be able to. And then, yeah, people in the end will probably win over the government anyway. At least that's what I.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. It does seem like they would have already shut Monero down if they actually thought they had a chance to do it, right?
Yeah, they probably would have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like they've admitted defeat in that regard.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also like you can't shut it down, right? You can never shut it down, but I guess you can make it economically unviable to use or something like that, or like just incredibly difficult. But I think it's flawed thinking, and when even exchanges like Coinbase and many other very public figures are so pro privacy, I think yeah, there is something to be said there, and I don't think it ends here. We're in a group as a network, I guess, with a lot of other privacy exchanges. It's called the Universal Privacy Alliance. It's with like NIM and Aztec and Zcash and a lot of other interesting protocols. I'd say check it out, but they are sort of I'm really a tech guy on that matter, but they are more of the policy thinkers, and they have some very interesting concepts on privacy. So if you're ever curious to the Tornado Cash crackdown and how that has an impact on Secret and other privacy chains, I'd say check it out.
I'm super interested in that group. I'm gonna have to jump in there. That's a Telegram group.
No, it's a sort of foundation type of thing.
Okay, I thought you could just hop in and see what everybody's talking about.
No, they have podcasts, or like podcasts. They have like spaces. So we as Secret would be invited to join the space, but it's like an alliance among big privacy players in the crypto ecosystem. So like I said, it's like NIM and Zcash and Secret, Aztec, like some other big ones.
Beam is Beam in there?
What did you say, sorry?
Is Beam one of them?
I'm actually not sure.
It doesn't matter. I'm curious.
I think there are like I'm gonna look for it. I think there are like nine people in it or something. Nine protocols. It's NIM, Manta, Secret, Orchid, Electronic Coin, Status, Oasis, Railgun, Aleo, and Aztec.
Wait, is Orchid another Cosmos ego chain?
Orchid is a like a decentralized VPN, but it's not a Cosmos chain as far as I know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it was an Interstellar one. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Just one last question for you here, since I appreciate your time. I know it's probably getting pretty late there. What did I ask everybody this at the end of the show? Hopefully, you and I can have another chat again someday on here. What does Bitcoin mean to you? And since you're involved in Secret Network, if somebody's involved in a project, I always ask them what that project means to them. So what does Bitcoin mean to you, and what does Secret Network mean to you?
What does Bitcoin mean to me? I guess Bitcoin in the true sense means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And that's the interesting aspect. Yeah. To me specifically, it shows how, as long as enough people value their own values, if that makes sense, so has like something to hold on to they think is important, then by definition it has enough value to survive. And I think that's the core sort of thing I think so is so fascinating about Bitcoin is that it will never die. I don't believe that it will sort of dissipate. It is like because there is such a big community behind it and it
Mhm.
has so many core followers that even if it loses all its potential economic value, which I don't think is a feasible end game, at least not for the coming years.
Right.
Um, it still has it still has this core principle of I disagree with some of the current system, or I agree with having my own personal choice regarding my own personal finances and my own personal monetary supply. Um, and so that I think is what Bitcoin means to me is sort of the if we all have our own values and enough people believe in it, then by definition we sort of other people have to sort of say, okay, then I guess it's happening. And I think that's really interesting about Bitcoin is that just I think we sort of take that for granted, the fact that we are already at a point where enough people have adopted it that it will not go away. So I think the
That's
persistence.
that's one of the best answers I've ever heard. I really I'm in tune with you on that one 100%. What about secret?
What secret means to me. I don't know. I have my core values. I guess I've always been, or sort of, I've been always really in tune. I guess with my core values, if you would put it like that.
Mhm.
Uh, so secret for me simply is the fact that I have my own environment where I can do my own things and don't have to share. And maybe that's sort of an introvert opinion, but it's the value that I can do whatever the fuck I want, and I don't have to always um, tell people or explain people how or what or when, and that comes in line with a very pragmatic approach. And I think those are the two things I value the most. It's like I don't want to share everything about myself. I just sometimes just want to make my own choices, do my own things without government saying you're not allowed to do this or you must do that.
Mhm.
I just sort of even if it's an okay thing to do, I sort of get tingly by the fact that I'm forced to do something. I don't know
Out
if
of
that makes
principle,
sense. Yeah, it sort of just bugs me. And
right?
then the second thing is I've always been super pragmatic in the sense that I hate is maybe a strong word, but I very much dislike when people are like uh, warriors on one side of the canal saying like, this is the only way to do it. There will never be another way. And then you just don't get anywhere. And I guess Secret is like completely the opposite of that. It's like, okay, we have to bring privacy to mainnet. There are people who require this. We need interesting applications. Fuck. However, we're going to do that. We just have to make sure it happens. So we're going to take the pragmatic approach, launch something on mainnet, iterate on it, improve on it. So what does secret mean to me? It's the pragmatic solution to keeping my core values, and that I very much really love.
Hey, that was an excellent way to wrap up the podcast. I appreciate your time, and I wish you guys nothing but the best and good luck in your aims with them.
Yeah, thank you too. I really liked it. I'm always up for a chat, definitely about Secret or Cosmos or tech stack in general. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this one and have a nice evening.
Yeah, hang on one second. I'll say goodbye to you off here.